Please let me know if you can hear me and if you can see me clearly. Hi everyone, welcome to Unacademy's YouTube channel. Today we learn about neurons and the nervous system and all of that. Really exciting, really interesting. We are at the wrong page, but okay. All right, wonderful. Chali. Please let me know if I'm clearly audible and clearly visible. Just give me a heads up. Okay, okay, chalo, theek hai. Great, great, great. Great to see all of you. Happy Wednesday to all of you. Welcome to Unacademy's YouTube channel. I'm Hafsa Malik. I'm your educator for psychology on Unacademy for the NTA-UGC NET platform. I'm your top educator for psychology. I teach for clinical psychology. I teach for NET, obviously. I teach for GATE. I teach for all PhD entrances. So come join in. What we're going to discuss today. Today we are going to discuss neurons, types of neurons, some basic functions of neurons, the different structures of neurons, and then a little bit about the divisions of the human brain. As you know, this is going to be a quick class. Your 45 minutes की class रहेगी, so please pay a lot of attention and try to grab as much as you can and try to learn as much as is possible for you to learn in the class. All right, this is a little bit about me. If you want to get to know me, if you want to get to know a little bit about me, you can just read through and pause later. And then today is the last day for Unacademy's 20% offer. If you do want to avail the 20% off, you can use my code Hafsa Live. आपको इससे क्या मिलेगा? You will get 20% instead of the regular 10 or 5 or whatever percent off. ठीक है? Now you have many different options to subscribe. You have many options. तो आप इनमें से कोई भी choose कर सकते हो. There's iconic and plus, whatever your heart desires. All right. Remember the code. That's about it. Only if you want to join the class. चलिए. Let's get started. Let's get started. Okay. Telegram group is Net with Hafsa. If you haven't joined yet, please go ahead and join. Special classes are generally Monday, Tuesday, then Thursday, then Friday on Unacademy at 7:30. Okay. And then YouTube classes 7:30 Wednesday. If you'd like me to do more of the YouTube classes, you can go ahead and request, and whatever topics you would desire or whatever topics you would like to see, you can go ahead and leave suggestions in my group in Net with Hafsa. Chaliye, let's start off. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Let's get started. All right, all right. Now, are we all aware that the human nervous system is basically made up of the central and the peripheral nervous system? क्या हमें ये पता है कि ह्यूमन नर्वस सिस्टम जो है, हमारा नर्वस सिस्टम जो है, उसका एक सेंट्रल पार्ट है, सेंट्रल पोर्शन है, which is our brain and our spinal cord, and it has a peripheral portion as well, which is basically all of our afferent and efferent nerves spread out throughout the body, right? And as well as our autonomic nervous system along with that. Yes, absolutely. Very good. तो सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम में क्या क्या आता है? Our brain as well as our spinal cord. Very important to remember, not only the brain but also the spinal cord. All right. Okay. Then what about the peripheral nervous system? Literally means that all of the nerves that are distributed throughout the rest of our body. हमारी बॉडी में जो बाकी के न्यूरॉन्स या बाकी के नर्व सेल्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड हैं, दैट मेक्स अप आवर पेरिफेरल नर्वस सिस्टम. दैट मींस throughout all of the nerves throughout our body. This can further be divided into somatic nervous system, which takes care of voluntary, mostly motor movements and voluntary functions. Okay, voluntary actions भी आप कह सकते हैं, mostly motor movement, like I said. And your autonomic nervous system performs automatic or involuntary functions. All right, great. You guys can also respond. आप भी respond कर सकते हो, and then I will understand if you, what you know so far. आपकी knowledge base क्या है? आप भी respond कर सकते हैं comments में. All right. And I'm checking. I'm consistently checking. So please go ahead and respond. चलिए. Now, the autonomic nervous system is the one that can be divided into the sympathetic nervous system, which is basically responsible for our fight or flight responses, as well as our parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically for rest and digest function, है ना? ये कब एक्टिव होता है? जब हम बिल्कुल रेस्ट करते हैं. कौन सा? पैरासिम्पैथेटिक. Sympathetic is our pupils dilate, our heartbeat increases, our breathing rate increases, our muscles get more tense, okay, urinary contractions don't happen, the tear ducts are inhibited, salivation is inhibited, digestion is inhibited, skin resistance is lower. All of those really cool things happen when the sympathetic nervous system is active. Okay? And the parasympathetic, very, very good, just has the opposite function of it. है ना? और सोमैटिक नर्वस सिस्टम में क्या क्या आता है? ऑल ऑफ आर सेंसरी और afferent neurons, which basically take signals from the rest of our body and bring it to the brain and the spinal cord. ये जो भी हम दुनिया में एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं ना, हमारी स्किन, हमारी आईज, जो भी सेंसेशन हम एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं वो हमारे ब्रेन तक या हमारे स्पाइनल कॉर्ड तक लेके जाते हैं ये. दैट इज आर afferent neurons. याद रखिए, afferent मतलब द इंफॉर्मेशन ascends, goes up. Okay, and this is therefore our sensory input. और आपके पास है आपके मोटर न्यूरॉन्स. मोटर न्यूरॉन्स क्या होते हैं? Efferent. They generally take information, take commands from the brain and the spinal cord and then later on carry out those functions. So you can say efferent for E and therefore exits the nervous system. Afferent for A, sensory, therefore ascends or goes up to the central nervous system. Very, very good. Very, very good, guys. Hanji, correct. Absolutely. Chalo, wonderful. Now that we've understood the human nervous system, can you tell me what is the most basic unit of the nervous system? हमारे human, obviously हम human ही हैं, तो nervous system का सबसे basic unit कौन सा है बताइए? What's the most basic unit of the nervous system? I will wait. I will wait for responses. Very, very good. The most basic unit here is a neuron. Very, very good. Okay, a nerve cell is also known as a neuron. Neurons can be smaller in size, larger in size, can be up to 1 meter long, some of our motor neurons, right? Hanji, absolutely. Let's try to understand the different parts of a neuron and what they do and इनकी function क्या है, यहाँ पे क्या क्या present होता है. This will allow you to understand the classes that we're going to start in plus, जो next week से आपका biological basis का unit start हो रहा है. This will allow you to understand all of that information much, much better. Right? The first part that we are interested in is the dendrites. Okay? Most neurons, we'll talk about unipolar, bipolar, multipolar, वो सारे neurons की हम बात करेंगे. But first of all, a very basic bipolar, actually this is a multipolar neuron. You see यहाँ पे dendrites बहुत सारी हैं. टिपिकल मोटर न्यूरॉन मल्टीपोलर न्यूरॉन है ये, मतलब डेंड्राइट्स काफी सारी हैं और एक्सन आपका एक है और सेल बॉडी भी एक ही है. ओके, ऑलराइट, ठीक है, वेरी वेरी गुड. नाउ डेंड्राइट्स आर बेसिकली रिसीवर्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन. ठीक है, डेंड्राइट जो होती है आपकी वो हमेशा इंफॉर्मेशन रिसीव करती है. किससे रिसीव करेगी? वेयर डू यू थिंक इट इज गेटिंग द इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम? कैन आई सिंपली से दैट neurons basically form a chain, and the synaptic cleft, which is generally the gap between one neuron and another, the axon is giving out information which is nothing but which is going to be received by the dendrite of the next neuron. ऐसा है? ऐसा है? हाँ जी, बिल्कुल है, ऐसा ही है, ऐसा ही तो है. Correct, absolutely. So our dendrite is going to basically just receive information from another active neuron. All right. Okay, so it is not this whole part which is the dendrite, not this whole part. It is just the spikes. तो ये जो आप spikes या spines देख रहे हैं, ये हैं आपकी dendrites. How many dendrites do we have? One set or many here? यहाँ पे कितनी dendrites हैं? काफी सारी हैं. This is typically what a motor neuron would look like. Then we have our cell body or our soma. Now, if you see plant cell, animal cell, आप जो भी देखें, eukaryotic cell, prokaryotic cell, do we have cell organelle? Cell organelle होते हैं, mitochondria होता है. There is rough endoplasmic reticulum, there are Golgi bodies, there are lysosomes and all of that. Yes, chloroplast we don't have because we are not plants. है ना? You have nucleus, controls the neuron. You have vacuoles which have supportive functions as well. Absolutely, absolutely, very very good. तो आपके cell organelle जो होंगे वो सारे यहाँ पे cell org, let's call it, and this is your cell body. It keeps the neuron alive and it keeps it functional and it gives it nutrients and all of that will happen here. Okay, synthesizes energy, gives you the energy that you later use for your action potentials. ठीक है, okay, wonderful. Great. Then what do we have over here? Then what else do we have? Then you have the cell membrane. हर एक सेल का यहाँ पे मेम्ब्रेन तो होगा ना, द सेमी परमिएबल मेम्ब्रेन दैट वी टॉक अबाउट, दैट्स वेयर that is present here throughout. आप जो भी outer covering यहाँ पे देख रहे हैं, that is nothing but your cell membrane, right? Cell membrane is semi permeable. This will again help you in the future classes. Very very good. Then what do we have? We also have the axon hillock. अब देखो यहाँ पे, this is the whole neuron. So we have demarcated or we have labeled where the dendrite is. Then we have also labeled where the cell body is. Then must we label where the axon actually starts? कहाँ पे आपके dendrites और cell body खत्म होते हैं और कहाँ पे आपका axon start होने वाला है. That is where the axon hillock is. And आपका action potential जो होता है, we must all be aware of an action potential and all or none law related electrical potential which maintains the same electrical charge and is used to carry signals within the neuron. हमारा न्यूरॉन जो अपने ही अंदर कम्युनिकेशन करता है from the dendrites to the axon or the axon terminal, वो कैसे होता है? That happens through action potentials that jump from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier. Yes, absolutely wonderful. Wonderful. ये सारे words 9th में सुने थे. चलो सुने तो थे. Okay, all right. Now the axon hillock is where the action potential starts. So please remember always, I will share this PDF with you in the combined PDF of the plus classes. So action potential initiates where? At the axon hillock. Very, very important for us to understand and very important for us to remember as well. उसके बाद ये node of Ranvier क्या होता है? For that we need to understand where the axon starts, where it ends, and where does the action potential actually take place. Now from here, ये मैं red से mark कर रही हूँ, and till the end. Can I say this is all the axon? Axon hillock से लेके पूरे terminal boutons या terminal buttons तक पूरा आपका axon ही है. Axon, if you want to sound fancy. Absolutely, the whole part is the axon. Okay, all right, fine, wonderful. Now here we need to understand that we have the myelin sheath, right? A substance made up of fat and protein, right? Lipids and proteins basically. इससे क्या होता है? Insulates the cell. आप सोचो आसपास भी तो neurons होते हैं. They also have electric charge. Why is it that electric charge doesn't go from one neuron to another? Right? Doesn't jump off. This myelin sheath basically insulates the neuron, prevents it from taking over any other neuron's electrical charge, and makes sure that the action potential carries forward without any loss of energy. यहाँ पे आपका myelin sheath make sure करेगा कि आपकी कोई energy lose ना हो. None of the energy is lost. Therefore, we maintain the action potential at the same plus 35 or plus 40 millivolts. ठीक है? Okay. All right. ठीक है. Increases the speed of the action potential also, like some of you have said. Very, very good. Very, very good. Now the node of Ranvier is actually the empty parts जहाँ पे myelin sheath नहीं होता है. All right. The myelin sheath, as you can see, is present in small little bundles or small little ovals. है ना? ये part जो है ये myelin sheath से covered है. और जो इसके बीच वाला येलो पार्ट है वो कवर्ड नहीं है. यू ऑल्सो सी अ येलो एरिया हियर between each round or each oval of myelin sheath which is not covered. Now these are basically the surface of the axon and this is known as the node of Ranvier. Actually यहाँ पे क्या होता है? यहाँ पे ही action potentials आपके jump करते हैं. They initiate here and they jump to the nodes of the Ranvier. Myelin sheath is only to increase the speed and insulate and so on the myelin sheath is not where the action potential is jumping. जो आपका action potential है ना वो initiate होता है और ना वो jump करता है myelin sheath पे. Okay, all right. So myelin sheath has basically a facilitator type of function here, or like a catalyst type of function, but it is not serving the base for the action potential to jump off of. Okay, all right. चलिए, wonderful, wonderful. Now here we are saying the Schwann cell is producing. तो क्या हम ये peripheral nervous system के न्यूरॉन को देख रहे हैं या फिर central nervous system के न्यूरॉन को देख रहे हैं? If I say that the myelin sheath is being produced by Schwann cells, am I talking about a neuron from the central nervous system, the brain or the spinal cord, or am I talking about a neuron, a motor neuron, which is part of the somatic nervous system? Very, very good. I am talking about the peripheral nervous system. Who produces the myelin sheath in the central nervous system? Central nervous system में हमारा myelin sheath कौन produce करता है बताइए? Very, very good. It is produced by oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system. Or oligodendroglia, because they are glial cells. Okay. Hanji. In our plus classes, we will also talk about neurons and glial cells. Now we know that in the brain, actually, our neurons are only 10 to something percentage, whereas glial cells are around 90%. Support cells ज़्यादा होती हैं, हमारे neurons उतने नहीं होते हैं brain. All right. Anyway, I hope you guys have understood this. Please let me know if you have. Now we will talk about unipolar, bipolar, pseudo-unipolar, and multipolar neurons. Let me know. अगर आपको doubt है तो I will clarify doubt also obviously. But if you don't have doubts, please let me know and then we'll move forward. Absolutely, there are various types of glial cells as well, which we will eventually look at. देखिए, three types of basic neurons we have. We have afferent neurons, efferent neurons, and we have interneurons that we need to remember. Sensory neuron afferent होता है, ये हमने discuss किया है. It basically takes signals from the different organs of the body, gives it to the brain or the spinal cord. Then we have a motor neuron. Motor neuron, also known as efferent neuron, again already discussed. Yes? And takes signals from the brain or the spinal cord and gives it to the different motor organs of the body. Then what is an interneuron? आखिर ये interneuron क्या होता है बताइए. So in the central nervous system, only in the central nervous system, to help with reflexes. अगर हमें जल्दी जल्दी मूव करना है ना, आप सोचो आपके पीछे कोई भाग रहा है, आपको हेड मूव करना है, और you touch something extremely hot and you need to pull your hand back. That is a reflex action and that is a reflexive function. Now it takes a lot of time for our central nervous system to get information, to decode that information and for us to act. मतलब आप पेपर में क्वेश्चन आंसर कर रहे हो तो वहां आपके एफरेंट न्यूरॉन को लेके जाना है इंफॉर्मेशन और आपके एग्जीक्यूटिव फंक्शंस को डिकोड करना है एंड देन यू विल आंसर. डू यू हैव दैट काइंड ऑफ टाइम व्हेन यू आर बेसिकली performing a reflex, or when you're running away from somebody, or when you're touching something very hot? You touched your straightening iron, you touched the iron that you were using for your clothes. Not fun. You can't think for 2-3 minutes and then go ahead and decide whether you should withdraw your hand or not. That is not cool. तो यहाँ पे interneurons जल्दी transmit करते हैं information right from sensory neurons in the central nervous system to the motor neurons in the central nervous system, so that we quickly withdraw our hand and the motor neuron works really quickly without us taking 2 to 3 minutes. Our whole hand or whatever would be burned by then, है ना. तो यहाँ पे interneurons क्विक एक्शन, रिफ्लेक्स एक्शन में हेल्प करते हैं, इसको फैसिलिटेट करते हैं. वेयर आर दीज प्रेजेंट? दे आर ओनली प्रेजेंट इन द सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम. प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट. If you will remember that, we will move on. Yeah, we will move on to the other types of neurons. All right, chaliye. Wonderful, wonderful. Now we have the unipolar neuron. ठीक है, ये poles आप थोड़े याद रखो. I will explain to you. Try to understand what's going on. Unipolar. Now these are axons. Okay. This is also axon. This is also axon here. Okay. This is terminal botons and this is the dendrite. Do we have any dendrite in a unipolar neuron? क्या हमारे पास unipolar neuron में dendrite है? Not really, not really. Sometimes there will only be dendrite and there will be no axon. Now, this is generally found in invertebrates, like small insects and all that. ये insects में हम देखते हैं. This is not seen in human beings. Insects and invertebrates. Okay, all right. So either only the axon, generally only the axons will be present, and this is your cell body, and इसी के through communication होती है, और only the dendrite will be present, and there are no two poles, you see. Whereas in a bipolar neuron, here you have your sensory receptors. So some kind of sensory neuron like your क्या कहते हैं इसको, your optic neuron and so on, right? उसपे sensory receptor एक side से होता है which serves as the dendrite, and the other side you have your axon, right? Yes, and in the middle you have your cell body. All right, ठीक है, fine. These are typically sensory receptors. कौन से? Bipolar neurons are typically sensory neurons. ठीक है. Then we have pseudo unipolar neurons. Pseudo मतलब नकली का unipolar. Can I say that this is not really unipolar? It starts off as a bipolar neuron, and then what happens is the cell body is shaped like that. It sort of comes to the middle of the neuron. ठीक है. कभी कभी एक साइड से dendrites होते हैं, and another side you will have axons, or sometimes you will have axons on both ends. ठीक है. Ideally, you will have dendrites on one end and axons on another end. It serves just the function of the bipolar neuron. सिर्फ ये दिखने में unipolar neuron जैसा होता है. A lot of time unipolar neuron will have cell body here also. ठीक है. So don't get confused by this. Sometimes you have dendrites here as well, and you have axons, and you have just cell body in the middle. That is why we call it pseudo unipolar, because it just looks like a unipolar neuron, but it is not. It is it serves the function of a bipolar neuron. And here also these are mostly sensory neurons. ठीक है? Okay, fine. Now a multipolar neuron, which we saw earlier. What kind of neuron did I tell you it was? अगर ये एफरेंट इफरेंट मोटर सेंसरी में इसको डिवाइड करेंगे, ये किस किस्म का न्यूरॉन मैंने आपको कहा है? आई टोल्ड यू दिस इज अ पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ न्यूरॉन. विच न्यूरॉन वुड दिस बी? बताइए बताइए. मल्टीपोलर, यस, बट हाँ मल्टीपोलर. पर्टिकुलरली एफरेंट और इफरेंट मोटर न्यूरॉन होगा, या फिर ये सेंसरी न्यूरॉन होगा? बताइए. मल्टी आई नो या. You don't give me, don't tell me the same things. Is it motor or is it sensory? You tell me. Very, very good. This is mostly going to be motor neurons. Why we say mostly is because there are exceptions also. Exceptions भी होती हैं. So motor neurons will be mostly multipolar, and then interneurons will also mostly be multipolar. Okay, it makes sense because आपको carry out करना है function यहाँ से, but you get a lot of input from various sources in motor neurons. All right. हाँ जी. So this is mostly multipolar neurons. You have multiple dendrites, and you have a single axon. Axon आपका एक ही है, right? And then you have your terminal vesicles. All right. Okay. Fine. Okay, guys. चलिए. If we are good to go here, and if we have understood, please let me know. If you have understood, please let me know. If you haven't understood also, please let me know. Chalo, I take it that we've understood. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Now, what we need to understand is a lot of people will see this structure. मैं आपको वही करा रही हूँ which you absolutely definitely need to understand anything and everything after. So a lot of kids will say, what is this neural tube? I don't understand. I don't remember order. What you need to understand is while the baby is developing and while the fetus is developing, जब बच्चा conceive होता है और फिर embryonic stage तक पहुंचता है, फिर fetal period होता है उसका, brain completely develop नहीं हुआ होता है. Yes? Are we aware of the fact? Okay, the brain develops a little slowly, right? Although it says rapid brain development, when we are conceived and when we are in the embryonic stage and when we are developing in the fetal stage, the brain goes from the neural tube to then becoming our full-fledged cauliflower brain. ठीक है? जो हमारा ये brain होता है ना, okay, ये बाद में develop होता है during development. पहले ऐसे start होता है, and this is the neural tube. Is this the neural tube? So we will try to understand what part of the neural tube develops into what part of the brain. Okay? The names are a little bit complex, but otherwise it's really, really good and really, really good to understand it now rather than struggling later. इसमें आप बिल्कुल struggle नहीं करेंगे if you try to understand. The front portion or the forebrain is also known as prosencephalon. ये हिस्सा, ये देख रहे हैं आप? Right? Prosencephalon, forebrain. Midbrain is also known as mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, lowest structure, is also known as the rhombencephalon. Okay, all right. Forebrain is prosencephalon, midbrain is mesencephalon, and hindbrain, the lower part of the brain, ये सब brain stem आपका cerebellum and all of that. Okay, all right. Is what is the rhombencephalon? इसको हम rhombencephalon कहते हैं. Now let's try to understand different parts of the forebrain, different parts of the midbrain, and then different parts of the hindbrain. All right? we'll go on to see it in a fully, हाँ, we'll see it in the next slide also. अभी के लिए आप यहाँ focus करो. The higher-most structure of the forebrain is known as the telencephalon. सबसे highest मतलब सबसे ऊपर का outermost structure is your telencephalon. Okay, all right. And telencephalon is the upper portion of the prosencephalon. Prosencephalon का सबसे ऊपरी हिस्सा जो है उसको हम telencephalon कहते हैं. You have all of your four lobes here. Can I say cerebral cortex में आपके four lobes होते हैं? Four lobes of the brain. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe. Yes. And then you have some limbic structures. Some limbic structures like the basal ganglia and so on and so forth. ठीक है? Okay. हाँ जी. Absolutely. Corpus striatum also, the fornix also. वो सब, हाँ, वो सब बाद में हम डिटेल में करेंगे. Now the next part is the diencephalon, which is simply the lower part of the forebrain. ये forebrain का ही हिस्सा है. ये कौन से structures हैं? ये subcortical structures हैं. ठीक है? ये सबकॉर्टिकल स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं. मतलब आपके बिल्कुल सेरिब्रल कॉर्टेक्स के बिल्कुल नीचे जो एरिया आता है वो ही डायनसेफेलॉन में आएगा. Now here you have mostly the thalamus, the hypothalamus and the epithalamus. Okay. Epithalamus, hypothalamus and the thalamus. Now most important to us here are the thalamus and the hypothalamus. We don't care about the epithalamus. So that is your parts of the prosencephalon, okay, or forebrain. तो telencephalon पहले आता है, उसके बाद you have your diencephalon. Then mesencephalon, as it is the midbrain. No changes here. Midbrain is mostly involved in motor functioning. Okay, all right. फिर rhombencephalon और hindbrain, what are the two parts and how are they organized? So ऊपर का हिस्सा या ऊपरी हिस्सा आपके hindbrain का is known as the metencephalon, where you have the pons, okay, most part of the brainstem. Pons, cerebellum, and also your ascending reticular activating system. Alright? Hanji. Tectum, tegmentum are parts of your midbrain. Correct. Absolutely. Very, very good. So what you see here in the rhombencephalon, metencephalon में क्या क्या आता है? You have the pons, you have the cerebellum, and you have the ascending reticular activating system. And then you have the myelencephalon, which is the absolute lowest part of your brain. आपके brain का सबसे निचला हिस्सा क्या होता है? Myelencephalon, which is nothing but your medulla oblongata. ठीक है? Last part brain का medulla होता है, and therefore this is आप ऐसे भी सोच सकते हैं कि the higher the structures go, the more refined they are in terms of function. ठीक है? ये जो lowest structure है, the lowest structure is responsible for the most basic functions of breathing and so on. Pons is responsible for sleep-related function, arousal-related function, cerebellum for motor coordination, midbrain also for motor functions, voluntary and involuntary motor movement, thalamus, hypothalamus for information relay, for emotional control, for homeostasis, and cerebral cortex mostly for executive function and more refined sensory information is understood, memories are stored, more refined functions basically. Okay, okay, fine, absolutely. Okay, great, wonderful. Now we will go ahead and we'll try to understand the different parts of the brain, and that will be it. अभी तक अगर आपको कोई डाउट है, so far if you have any doubts, please ask. If you have any doubts at all, please ask. Otherwise, we are good to go. Please remember these. ये आपको याद रखना है. No excuses. हाँ जी, no excuses. ये याद रखना है. All right. Now see here. All right, I'll try to draw. If you prefer that I draw, I will draw. But for now, this is clear enough. This is quite colorful. Let's try to understand what are the different parts over here. अलग-अलग parts हमारे क्या हैं हम यहाँ पे understand कर लेते हैं. All right. So you have your brain stem actually. ये जो पूरा हिस्सा है ना यहाँ का, this one, the gray area, this is our brain stem. The brain stem is not a separate structure, but it's basically the stalk sort of a thing on which our medulla, our pons, and the whole brain is actually placed, especially the midbrain subcortical structures. ठीक है? जैसे ट्री का स्टेम होता है स्टेम अलग से एक हिस्सा नहीं होता है, लेकिन लीव्स या बाकी चीजें जो होती हैं वो सारी स्टेम पे प्लेस्ड होती हैं. तो यहाँ पे वैसे ही ब्रेन स्टेम आपका ब्रेन का अलग कोई हिस्सा नहीं है. ब्रेन स्टेम पे ही सबसे नीचे वाला हिस्सा आपका मेडुला है, राइट? व्हाट वर द फंक्शंस ऑफ द मेडुला? थिंग्स लाइक ब्रीदिंग, वेरी इनवॉलंटरी सर्वाइवल रिलेटेड फंक्शंस. क्या है इसकी फंक्शंस? In like breathing rate, heartbeat, and all of that, all are visceral organs, internal organs, जो necessary survival related functions को carry out करते हैं, that is controlled by the medulla. Very, very good. Then next structure is our pons. You see, is this also present on the brain stem? क्या हम कह सकते हैं कि जो हमारा pons है ये भी present है बिल्कुल brain stem पे ही? Yes, absolutely. The pons basically is responsible for arousal, for sleep related function. Okay, all right, absolutely. So the quality of sleep, the amount of serotonin, serotonin जो neurotransmitter है वो भी यहाँ पे आसपास raphe nuclei में synthesize होता है. Therefore affects our sleep also. Therefore, of course, helps stabilize our mood also. So pons deals with all of those functions. ठीक है? Okay, fine. Then we have another part of the hindbrain, which is the cerebellum, also known as the little brain. Now, what is its main function? यहाँ पे motor coordination, voluntary as well as involuntary, and refined motor movements. Okay, smooth, refined motor movements, voluntary as well as involuntary, plays a role in both. All right, and classical conditioning जो होती है उसकी learning यहाँ पे ही होती है. Classical conditioning learning takes place through and in the cerebellum. All right, very, very good. Very, very good. Absolutely, very, very. Then what do we have? We also have the ventricles. What are the ventricles? Do they carry the cerebrospinal fluid? CSF? क्योंकि हमारा ब्रेन जो होता है it's basically present or enclosed within a skull, okay, a protective layer, and then there are meninges also which carry all of the blood vessels, and then you have your क्या कहते हैं इसको arachnoid membrane, pia mater, dura mater. Then you also have the cerebrospinal fluid in which the brain is immersed, okay, जो brain को shock से बचाता है. Ventricles also carry cerebrospinal fluid. चलिए, wonderful, very, very good. Now a little higher than that, what do we have? We have the midbrain over here. क्या है यहाँ पे हमारा midbrain है. Now the midbrain has two main areas, the tectum, which is the roof, and the floor, which is the tegmentum. Okay. Tectum particularly houses or attached to it are the superior and inferior colliculi. ठीक है. सुपीरियर और इंफीरियर कलिकुलाई कहाँ पे अटैच्ड होता है? टेक्टम से अटैच्ड होता है. दिस इज helpful for superior colliculi, play a role in vision related function, vision related reflexes, and inferior colliculi play a role in auditory reflexes. तो इसको vision V लिखेंगे यहाँ पे, A for auditory. Okay, all right, absolutely. And these mostly play a role in क्या कहते हैं इसको motor functioning. In the tegmentum, near the tegmentum, you have your substantia nigra. You हाँ जी, absolutely, absolutely. Near the tegmentum is where you have your substantia nigra. You also have the red nucleus around it. So a lot of motor related functions. क्योंकि इसके बिल्कुल ऊपर जो है आपका limbic system placed है. Okay, you have your limbic system over here. Right. And what does the limbic system do? It has the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the septum. You have the amygdala, you have the hippocampus. So memory and emotion related functions are carried out by the limbic system, and motor related functions particularly mostly related to basal ganglia. 5 nuclei we will discuss in the future. Okay. For now, just remember it as a structure. Now the corpus callosum is what? क्या हम कह सकते हैं कि corpus callosum हमारे दो hemispheres को join करता है? Are we aware that most of the structures, probably except for Broca's, the pineal gland and Wernicke's area, most structures in the brain are duplicated? क्या आपको पता है कि दो hemispheres होती हैं और एक एक structure जो आप यहाँ पे देख रहे हैं वो आपका दूसरे hemisphere में भी होगा? Mid sagittal section if you take. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right. So, हाँ जी. Correct. Yes, left and right. Absolutely. And the corpus callosum is basically a bunch of nerve fibers which connects the two hemispheres. Okay? If this is cut, the two hemispheres will no longer be able to communicate. कोई और dysfunction नहीं होगा, बस communication दोनों में कट जाए, which is very, very dangerous, which is not fun at all. Now we have our thalamus, hypothalamus, and all of that. The last structure to develop was the cerebral cortex. ये जो आप ऊपर का area देखते हैं, उसको क्या कहा जाता है? It's called the cerebral cortex. All of this, as you will see. This is also known as the neocortex, right? Because evolution wise, it was the last structure to develop. इसका क्या मतलब होता है? Does it mean that human beings used to be born without the cerebral cortex? No, not like that. So can I say that there's a whole map of evolution which starts with lizards and amphibians and stuff? अगर आपने evolution का चार्ट देखा है तो हम कहाँ से आए हैं वो सिंगल सेल ऑर्गेनिज्म से ही सब आए हैं ना तो उसको evolution कहते हैं. So the smaller organisms have more of the midbrain, like rats and these and that. Then as you go seeing in vertebrates, as you go seeing in mammals, धीरे धीरे क्या होता है? The cerebral cortex area increases. Humans have the most association area. Humans have the one of the largest amounts or largest areas of the cerebral cortex, and therefore this was the last area of the brain to develop. Can I say this also serves the most high level function? क्या हम ऐसा कह सकते हैं कि हमारी सेरिब्रल कॉर्टेक्स हमारे चार लोब्स जो हैं फोर ब्रेन के ये सबसे कॉम्प्लिकेटेड फंक्शन के साथ डील करते हैं? Yes, absolutely. And can I say that the lower I go, the more simple the function gets? Can I say that? जितना lower हम जाते हैं उतनी easy function होती है. Right? In the sense that the medulla deals with survival related. So if the medulla is destroyed, we die. If the pons is destroyed, we go into a coma. But if the cerebral cortex is destroyed or parts of it are destroyed, we are no longer able to make decisions. Especially ये जो prefrontal area या prefrontal cortex आपका होता है. All right? Especially your sort of, let's divide like this. Actually, okay? Especially your prefrontal area. This is particularly for your executive functions. Executive matlab decision making, higher order thinking. Okay? Okay. Now we have our frontal lobe. Lobe number 1. Again, don't need to, there is no order as such. It's just that हम ऐसे ही discuss करते हैं in order of importance. Frontal lobe first, then we have the parietal lobe, उसके ठीक पीछे. Then you have the temporal lobe, right? And then we have the occipital lobe, right? These are the four lobes of the brain. Now here I will just tell you about what important areas or what major projection areas are present here. Projection areas generally are simpler in function, okay? And they carry out one particular function. तो motor cortex जो है आपका वो frontal lobe पे present है यहाँ पे. Okay, this is where all of our motor signals come from. जो हमारे motor commands आते हैं brain से और फिर हम carry out करते हैं frontal lobe से आते हैं. Whereas in the parietal lobe, what do you have? You have the somatosensory cortex or sensory. You have the senses of touch, pressure, temperature, pain, which are projected here. Okay. Neither olfaction nor taste is projected here. What did I say? Touch, pressure, temperature, pain. Vision के लिए आपका auric lobe है और audition के लिए temporal lobe, right? Now for olfactory or smell, there is an olfactory bulb which is present right below the frontal lobe on the temporal lobe. And there is olfactory, this gustatory cortex, taste related also, which is separate. वो भी अलग है. वो भी अलग है. Very, very good. Okay, all right. Now what else do we have here? So somatosensory cortex is in the parietal lobe. Then where is the auditory cortex? जहाँ पे हमारी सारी auditory information project होगी. Auditory cortex is somewhere, ये तो obviously यहाँ पे area ऐसे नहीं दिखाया है. Auditory cortex is over here, around over here, ठीक है? So you have the auditory cortex. Very, very good in the temporal lobe. Very, very good. And obviously visual cortex कहाँ होगा? यहाँ lower area में you have your primary visual cortex. You have your primary visual cortex. Absolutely. Each of the lobes, जो चार lobes हैं हमारे, each of them has an association area. Association area integrates different functions and basically either combines, integrates, makes more complex decisions and take care of more complex functions. हमारे ब्रेन में ज्यादा एरिया एसोसिएशन एरिया है. Whereas projection area, what you saw over here, your motor cortex, then your somatosensory cortex, then your auditory cortex, then your visual cortex, those are projection areas. Primary cortices. Okay? तो इसको क्या कहते हैं? Simpler functions, single functions. It's not like they are simple, they are simpler when compared to the association areas. That's all. That is all. That is a very, very simple overview of the brain. If you guys have any doubts, please ask. अगर आपको किसी area में doubt है, or if you want me to explain something, please ask. So we have a central sulcus here, or the central fissure, and we also have gyri. So I'll just tell you कि sulci क्या होते हैं और gyri क्या होते हैं. Now we need to understand that the brain surface isn't smooth like a plain sheet. ऐसा नहीं है ना कि brain की surface plain paper की तरह है. There are bumps and grooves and bumps and grooves, right? The grooves or the valleys, जो low area होता है, इसको sulcus कहते हैं. Because the brain isn't demarcated as such. ऐसा नहीं कि brain के clearly चार हिस्से हैं और आप कहेंगे कि चार lobes हैं. It's not like that. It's actually very whitish or grayish in color, the whole brain. It's not at all colorful. And it's not easy to demarcate. So the deep areas, okay, to increase the surface area, there are bumps and folds and all. Okay, all right. All right. तो यहाँ पे जो deep areas होते हैं उनको sulcus and plural को sulci कहा जाता है. Many are sulci. Single is sulcus. Now gyri are the raised areas, the bumps or the raised areas. Like this. Okay. This is a single is gyrus and plural is gyre. All right. Okay. Fine. All right. All right, Ran. All right. चलो ठीक है. I'm glad आपका ये clear हो गया confusion. और कोई confusion है? Ma'am, neural tube begins to develop in embryonic stage now. Yes. Yes. That is when the organ differentiation happens na, in the embryonic stage, and that is when different structures start developing. So yes, absolutely. Ma'am, lateral ventricle produces cerebrospinal fluid. I think so. I'll have to check. All right. Okay. If there are no doubts, then we are done for the day. Don't forget that today is your last day for the offer to get 20% off using the code Hafsa Live. अगर आप ऑफर अवेल करना चाहते हैं, आपको हफ्सा लाइव कोड यूज करके 20% ऑफ मिलेगा सब्सक्रिप्शन पे. ये रही आपकी प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन. दिस इज योर आइकॉनिक सब्सक्रिप्शन. You can go ahead and choose whatever your heart desires. I hope you liked the class. I had a great time talking to all of you. I had a great time talking to all of you. I will see you soon. Every Wednesday, like I said, if you'd like to see more classes, I can make more shorter classes as well. Please go ahead and let me know. If you did like the class, please go ahead, share, like, subscribe, and all of that fun stuff. I'll be ending the class here. Thank you so much for learning with me, and thank you so much for watching.